call us all to live into deeper commitment to our first principle, that is, affirming the worth and dignity of every person. In 2019, we lost 4 leaders in disability advocacy. When Marca Brista became paralyzed after a swimming accident in Chicago in 1977, traveling across the city suddenly became difficult and in some cases impossible. There were few accessible transportation options and seemingly even fewer accessible bathrooms. When she made it to a restaurant, which usually required entering through the kitchen, the servers would turn to her friends and ask, "What does she want to order?" She said, "It took me a while to really grasp that this was a matter of discrimination." As she put it, it was not that her wheelchair was too wide for certain doors, rather those doors were too narrow for her wheelchair. Within 3 years of her injury, she founded a disability advocacy organization, and she went on to play a key role in drafting and passing the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. In the run-up to passing that legislation, she was part of a group of more than 60 activists who abandoned, who abandoned their crutches and wheelchairs and began crawling up the 83 stone steps that led to the Capitol. And among those folks was Jennifer Keelan, an 8-year-old with cerebral palsy who declared, "I'll take all night if I have to," as she pulled herself along in her arms and her hands. Born in 1940, Anita Silvers had polio as a child and suffered partial quadriplegia as a result. She got her BA at Sarah Lawrence College and her PhD at Johns Hopkins University, and she became a renowned bioethics and feminism scholar and activist, especially regarding interpreting the Americans with Disabilities Act. And she argued that disability rights should be viewed the same as other civil rights and not as an accommodation or as a social safety net issue. She wrote, "Listening to the voices of people with disabilities in their own words, we cannot help but observe that justice must offer first the visibility of full participatory citizenship and not a spotlight that targets them as needing more than others do." End of quote. When she first started as an academic 5 decades ago, before campus buildings were equipped with elevators or retrofitted with elevators, she was assigned to teach on the second floor of the old humanities building at her campus. And she would arrive long before her classes were scheduled so that the students and colleagues would not see her pulling herself up the stairs. Marilyn Saviola was born in 1945 in New York and was also a polio survivor and quadriplegic. You know, it's interesting how these polio stories remind us about what life was like before the widespread use of vaccinations. In her teens, she realized that she was trapped in her inaccessible house and chose to live at Goldwater Memorial Hospital on Roosevelt Island. She attended college classes by calling in on the phone and taking her tests over the mail. She eventually got a master's in rehabilitation counseling. She was a pioneer for disability advocacy in the 60s when nobody else was doing this kind of work. So in New York City, she worked to get curb cuts built and promoted access to health care for folks with disabilities. In 2010, she noted that one clear sign of success, at least in New York, that she saw was visibility. She said, "One of the great changes is I'm not the only one. I'll go to an event, a concert, I'll go in a store, and there are other people there who are wheelchair users. That didn't happen 30 years ago." Carrie Ann Lucas was born in 1971. She was an athlete studying sports medicine when she began to experience the onset of muscular dystrophy. Lucas started her career as a teacher before earning her master's divinity to pursue life as a pastor. And soon after that, she faced discrimination based on her disabilities when she was trying to adopt a child, and that motivated her to become a lawyer. As a result of the treatment she received, she founded Disabled Parents' Rights, an organization to fight discrimination against parents with disabilities. And Lucas eventually became a nationally known disability rights attorney, and a mother of 4 children, each of whom were adopted and living with disabilities. So let me restate that. Carrie Ann Lucas was partially paralyzed. She used a ventilator. She was partially blind and hard of hearing. And she raised 4 children who also had disabilities. She was also the lead plaintiff against death with dignity bills, claiming that such bills would disproportionately affect people with disabilities by prematurely ending their lives. In February of the past year, 47, she had a cardiac arrest and died from the complications. According to her friends and family, Lucas's death was hastened by her insurance company's denial of necessary medication. Her work is not done.